Donald Trump used his keynote speech at CPAC to endorse you. Let's play a bit of what he said.
The leader of the UK Reform Party, who, by the way, did really well in that last election. I've been his friend for a long time, and I wasn't sure, am I supposed to be his friend or not? But it never mattered to me if he did well or not. I always liked him, but it's easier to like him when he got the kind of votes he got. He really took it by storm, and they say he's going to do even better this time. Nigel Farage. Where is Nigel? Thank you, Nigel. Thank you. What a great guy.
Nigel, I've got to say, the left must be in an absolute meltdown hearing that from Donald Trump. Now, look, I know that you and Donald Trump are quite close, but, I mean, how does it feel for you to get an endorsement like that on the world stage?
Well, obviously delighted, and yes, I have been a friend of his for a long time, and, you know, I stand up for him and he stands up for me, and that's the way friendship works. Doesn't mean we always agree on everything, but we're friends. What was very interesting about the timing of this is that Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, is going to the White House on Thursday. So in diplomatic terms, what Trump did was pretty extraordinary. Yeah, no, delicious, really.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to be on a fly on the wall, wouldn't you, at a meeting between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. I mean, I can't imagine it's going to be very stimulating to be in a room with Keir Starmer, but I'm sure we'll find out more. Now, look, what is pretty clear, I've got to say, Nigel, is that you are living rent-free in the mind of Keir Starmer at the moment. You'd think he'd have bigger priorities to worry about. I mean, illegal immigration, crime, the list goes on. Instead, he seems to have quite an obsessive interest in you. Have a listen to this.
You want to know what Farage and Reform are doing on their rare visits to Parliament? They're voting against our employment rights bill. And what about the NHS? They want to charge people to use our NHS. They claim to be the party of patriotism, but they're fawning over Putin. No, they are not the answer for working people in Britain.
Nigel, why can't Keir Starmer stop talking about Reform UK?
Because they're terrified. That's why they're absolutely scared out of their wits, because they know that working class communities are seeing manufacturing being closed down, their domestic bills going up, open door immigration on a scale this country has never witnessed before, and illegal migrants still crossing the channel in boats, and all the promises that Starmer made just 8 months ago, everything is turning to dust, and his voters, his traditional voters, he fears are going to come to us en masse, and that he'll have a catastrophe at the next election. So, yeah, we are deep inside his mind. What is interesting is he barely mentions the leader of the 194-year-old Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch. So what is clear is Reform is now the opposition. Starmer knows it, and he's very frightened.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very clear. And Nigel, you mentioned there illegal immigration. I noticed that you made a speech earlier in Cornwall. You're vowing to deport migrants who arrive by dinghy. Why is this such an important policy for you?
Because it's so unfair. It's unfair on taxpayers that young men who throw their documents into the English Channel when they get to our 12-mile territorial line, so we can't identify them, get put in 4-star hotels, get free medical care, free dental care, 3 square meals a day, spending money, and virtually all of them are allowed to stay forever. That's unfair on working people paying tax. But you know who else it's unfair on? Those people who've legally come to Britain as immigrants, paid their way, and they see these people walking in and being given everything. It is wrong, it is unfair, and I will add, it is also a national security threat, as we've got young men coming in from Afghanistan, from Iran, from Iraq, and we were warned by ISIS a few years ago that they would flood the continent with their operatives using dinghies. So from every measure, this must stop.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so dangerous otherwise. Now, I thought this was quite fascinating because Labor's war on British history seems to be continuing. Keir Starmer has removed Winston Churchill portraits from Parliament. Nigel, what kind of a culture war is Keir Starmer waging here by doing this?
Isn't it funny that Donald Trump has put the bronze bust of Winston Churchill back into the Oval Office and Keir Starmer is removing all trace? The Labour Party are basically run by a bunch of human rights lawyers who hate Britain, hate our history, think everything about us is totally shameful and would much rather we were part of larger agglomerations like the European Union or some form of UN government. That's how they think, and they view Churchill as a villain. I think they think he's far right, you know. What they don't realise is the liberties and freedoms that we enjoy in Britain and Europe today wouldn't even exist if it hadn't been for the courage of Winston in standing alone against the Nazi tyranny. But it just tells you everything you need to know about these people. They are full of self-loathing for Britain, British culture and British history. And do you know what? In Reform, we know our past is not perfect, but we're still very proud of it.
Absolutely, as you should be, and we think the same here in Australia. We should be proud of our past, but the left always tie themselves in knots of guilt over and over again. Now, look, before we let you go, Nigel, I have to get your reaction here on the cancellation of MSNBC host Joy Reid, and I've got to play for you some of her finest moments. Have a look at this.
We do have a fascist groundswell in parts of this country, mainly among white men, let's be clear. The racist tomahawk chop, the gesture and chant, promoting stereotypes, caricatures, and frankly, hatred of Native American people. Similarities to what happened in Germany and what's happening now in America are just undeniable. History may not repeat verbatim, but it sure does rhyme.
Oh, Nigel, we're almost out of time, but whatever will we do without the race beta herself?
Yeah, bigoted, over-opinionated, miserable, goodbye, good riddance.
See you later, absolutely. Nigel Farage, a pleasure catching up with you. Thank you so much for joining me on the show this evening.